what's called SS4A, Safe Streets for All grants. It's a very quick turnaround, unfortunately, as a lot of the federal grants are. It's due July 10th, so we're working pretty furiously on it. But it's for an action planning grant. So please feel free to ask any questions, but because the action planning hasn't been done. But what I'm really interested in, so it has a lot of community engagement that's involved. Most likely there will be some type of task force. It may not be called a task force, but of various community members. I've asked for Sustainability Commission to write one, and they have. I've also asked for Green Space to write one. PCB is a little bit of a different fit, but the grant has a huge equity lens, and there's a lot of equity components. Of our commissions at the city, PCB is the one that has the most charge to consider equity. So as the task force is developed, and it would be up to those members to decide who else is on it and what those actions are. But I think that there's a place at least for a PCB representative, and that's how I'm going to pose it within the grant. So I have a draft support letter that you all can alter in any way that you wanted to. We're also writing it for some demonstration projects again. So this will lead up to a secondary grant if we successfully get this to where we can implement some things. Part of the demonstration projects that we're looking at is perhaps doing some temporary speed bumps in certain places, looking at the traffic data. So certainly work with the police department on that. Improving walkability in certain areas. Many of our neighborhoods, particularly in North Webster, don't have sidewalks in all the areas. So if we get sidewalks in those places, doing some different types of striping. And we recently wrote a grant for vehicle charging, EV charging. This will also tie into that, making sure that we have accessible charging for everybody, ADA compliant, energy efficient, which charging itself is, but many of the stations that we wrote for are solar powered. So doing some things like that. So that's an incredibly broad overview, and I know it is. But again, it's an action planning grant, so I don't know what those actions would be, but would really like to have help making sure that we are engaging all community members. As you all know, historically, not all segments of the community are engaged, and engagement looks like very, very different to different people. So I really want to make sure that we're engaging with community as you all expect us to. That's my pitch. Please write us a support letter.
You'll get the sample letter. So
I've got it. Got it.
If we don't get a quorum tonight, we're just have a little short Zoom meeting, 10 minutes or whatever, to take a vote on and approve it.
Yeah.
It's
Makes
due July 10th, so it's like,
It's due July 10th. I'm hoping to have all letters by June 30th, so we can start packaging. But I've got this draft letter. I can forward that to you. I'm excited about it.
Yeah. Where are the details of all those plans that you just mentioned? Are they available to us or just what you told us?
Kind of what I told you.
Yeah.
But I'm truly happy to answer anything. And if you all want to see the grant application once it's done, and now that the charging grant that I mentioned is done, I'm also happy to share what we
Sound good.
proposed. So, you know, it is. I wish we had a little more time on the proposals, and the grant writing of that degree is pretty new to the city, so it's a nice foray. Into, I'm confident we'll at least get a portion. We're very large grants. The EV charging was, we wrote it for about 2.5 million. This one we're not quite done, but I suspect it'd be in the $10 million range.
say 2 or
Great.
10.
10. Infrastructure projects are expensive. Hoping we get the school district on board and if there's some meaningful difference. So. Okay, I will get it sent. Thank you
That's
all.
exciting. Thank you.
It is
thanks, Dr.
exciting.
Peoples.
Yeah, hope you guys get a quorum.
Yeah, right.
Or maybe,
We will visit.
maybe you wanna- that's fine.
Right.
Thank you.
Well,
Like I said, we can start. I mean, we have a meeting, just can't really vote on anything.
so we could share the information that you prepared about the stops report. I don't think there's any point bringing up the minutes until we have a forum. So I guess we can just open the meeting officially and we'll
Sure.
kick off with Dale.
This is here. You sent this out. Alexa. So
Yes.
hopefully everybody had.
Well, I thought
Yeah, you did. Excellent.
So hopefully everybody would at least get a chance to look at it. I don't know if you need me to read it verbatim, but if you do, I certainly will. But the bottom line is we have done a 20-year data analysis on our vehicle stops reports. The formula that the state uses is based upon the driving population, the estimate of driving population in each agency's jurisdiction. Until 2 or 3 years ago, they were using the US Census, an estimated census, then they went to the American Community Survey. And during each of the last 20 years, the black population in Webster has incrementally gone down. In the last few years, it's gone down significantly. One of the things we look at is also the resident rate, which they did start keeping track of in the last 4 years. But if you look at our vehicle stops, only 15% of the 2022 vehicle stops were residents. And of the residents, black drivers were stopped at a rate of less than 1 every 4 days. Well, it's only 89 black residents were stopped during 2022 out of 5,033 stops. So obviously the ACS is subject to errors. It's indicated in the document. The formula that's used is flawed. Having said all that, we don't discount taking a look at the report, taking a look at the data, and making sure that even though they said, I think we have legitimately take a look at it, that the formula that they use is not going to really give us an accurate picture of whether it's profiling or not. That's something we do want to keep track of and we do want to look at. Again, this year there was another 10% decrease in the black population from last year. As you can see, there was a pretty big jump. Again, it's anecdotally, but there's been a huge increase in traffic since COVID in 2021. So I think that accounts for some of it. A better barometer would be looked at probably like a 20-mile radius around us. We have I-44 highways, we have arterial roads going through Webster. A lot of transient traffic again. Less than 15% of the stops were made to residents. The resident only rate went up to 4.10. Again, I don't really have a good explanation for that, not even anecdotally. But a couple of things that we'll look at here shortly, I think will help us, at least helps me feel confident that we aren't engaging in racial profiling. Does anyone have any questions about things? As you can see, the disparity rate in the early years when the black population was higher and they were using different census was generally, around 2.
The stops per 1,000 for 2022 appears to be higher than 2021. Any reason for that, or just more traffic, or
There's a couple of reasons. In 2020, I mean, like 2019, we had the George Floyd incident, and we also had the Missouri Supreme Court was looking at the courts, looking at traffic. There are a lot of different things that converged at that time that caused the officers to back off of traffic enforcement. And then another big factor was in 21, we had COVID. And we weren't making, the one time we were making traffic stops was for hazardous moving violations. We actually put in a policy. The one time that we would make a traffic stop was if it was something that was serious other than
tail light.
we weren't stopping for equipment violations or minor violations. We weren't stopping for speeding, and generally even that was for serious speeding, for careless imprudent, DWI, those kind of things. So those 2 years that COVID affected that quite a bit. And as you can see in 2022, we started back with stronger traffic enforcement, especially in the residential areas. Except for the grants, and it's important that we do them. I mean, I know people say, what are you doing up on the highway? You need to protect your residents. Well, a couple things. If we're not up on the highway and the speeds are going, people going 90, 100 miles an hour, we're gonna have accidents up there with a lot of injuries. It's only basically death fatalities for traffic. And then the second part of that is MoDOT also wants us up there. The State Highway Patrol does not cover, I mean, they do cover the highway, but they do not enforce traffic, in the municipalities or in the city to any great degree. MoDOT gives us grants, generally run from 11,000 to 20,000 a year, and grants where they will pay for overtime for officers to work radar, seatbelt enforcement, WI, DUI enforcement on the highways. And we accept those grants because it does help us. Then we don't have to put our staff up on the highway on our dime, but you put them up there on the state's dime, like, on grants for overtime. So that's, we still do considerable amount of enforcement on the highway, but that's the reason why. But we have backed in quite a bit. It used to be that we would run, when you're seeing the numbers are up in here, a lot of that was due to us spending more time with them.
And I remember you providing breakdowns or trying to approximate whether it was a highway stop or a throughway or a residential.
Right. But we did.
One other thing I had understood has changed is Missouri Highway Patrol during COVID. They actually had a policy that they weren't stopping people for expired plates, partly because a lot of the offices were shut down.
Well,
And
we wanna-
so that is something that they changed. Now they explicitly have asked departments to start doing that.
And it has become an issue because people got used to that. So people have expired temporary tags and we're too concerned about that. Well, license plates and registrations, we've started back enforcing that. It's still not to the extent that it used to be. Some people were aggravated about that, but during COVID, we just wanted to limit personal contact. This is for the officer safety, but also for the public safety. So we really didn't engage probably much in traffic enforcement unless it was something that was serious.
And it was expired tags that's countywide and citywide. I mean, this metropolitan St. Louis area, it's all spoke that they're gonna up that.
Yes. I remember reading that.
Do you break down the highway stops away from the others in there? I didn't-
I have it in this one, but I can fairly easily.
Does it skew it a lot? I just meant, since the percentage drivers are a lot different on Highway 44 than in
The-
Webster Groves.
Again, that's one of the problems with the formula.
All right,
The driving population up on the highway is nothing like the population within our city. Right? And that's not just us. But you can see when we graph it, there's a big correlation between the black population and the disparity rate. Population was higher, disparity rate was here. As soon as it started going down, the disparity rate started going up. And here, again, it doesn't explain all of it. Again, and anecdotally, I think a lot of it has to do with the fact that there is more traffic when after COVID, people are out more, driving more. And we're in the center of St. Louis County in the inner ring, and we just have a lot of transit traffic coming through our city.
One of the things Dale and John and I got on a call just to try and understand like what we were gonna go through and, you know, as far as the impact of your proportion of your population that is, you know, of any given race. It really does. I put together a table with just some of our surrounding communities, Shrewsbury, Rock Hill, Maplewood. And we're very disparate. Like we're most similar to Kirkwood, but they have 6% Black population. Their disparity is lower. And so I actually looked at, well, what's sort of a middle ground of, so Maplewood has 14% Black population. And well, what would happen if we calculated our rate index with 14%? And well, golly, then we go down to 1.64. Still a disparity, but that's a huge difference. So, and a lot of articles, one of them I shared, you know, it seems pretty universal that folks are like, well, this disparity index isn't so great, but maybe the underlying data, you know, and trends that you can discover, you know.
I think it'd be a more accurate picture. There's still problems with it, and they like you read in your articles you put out and also read the executive summary from the AG. There's still problems with it, but I think you would get a more accurate reflection if for each city, if you did a 20-mile radius, because people are traveling, and that's probably a good gauge of what your commuter traffic is. It's much closer to what you're seeing. So that, again, you're not getting that as accurate a picture as you could. But you also need to look at other factors. I didn't, we've done this before, but I didn't put it on this, and that is, you want to look at the number of complaints that you have. You want to look, we now have the car videos before, we have the body cam videos now. You want to look at the complaints you're getting, if you're getting complaints, and how your if you audit your videos, how your officers are behaving in traffic stops. In the last 10 years, we've had one complaint about anything regarding race in a traffic stop. That was in 2014, and that was unfounded. We go to the car video and unfound that. So obviously, not everybody that has a complaint makes a complaint, but out of the thousands and thousands of stops that we've gotten, we only have one complaint related to a racial accusation, allegation. I think that's gives you kind of good barometer of how the officers are behaving, that there's not any kind of systemic racial profiling. As I said before, the officers aren't perfect, we're not perfect. I can't promise you that an officer never does that, but we train against it. Our culture is, again, goes against what we preach in our training. So I really don't think that we have any officers out there, even if there's somebody who has that in their mentality, they aren't doing it because if they get caught doing it, they know they're going to break the discipline.
Well, do you look at, so this report comes out once a year and you report at a given point in time. Do you look at that data and disaggregate it like do you look at per officer? Sort of what their rates are for,
It's
and not so even so much stops. To me, what was most interesting, or interesting is the right word, but what happens after a stop? Because I don't think you know usually the race of a driver when you stop them. And so what happens after? And
predominantly you don't. Most of those tickets, I should say most, a large percentage of the tickets that we write, the officers write, are radar tickets for speeding. And obviously the radar gun can't tell who the driver is, the sex or the gender or the race.
or the age.
or
Could
the
be an
age.
oldster speeding along.
It's really difficult to break down the aggregate of individual officers. And it's even more difficult to apply this to it, because what happens is you have an officer who's assigned to North Webster. The stops that he's going to be making in North Webster are going to be more resident, black residents than
yeah.
somebody who's riding on the south of 44.
Mhm.
So when you do that, we do take a look at it. We try to make sure, like I said, that individually it's not skewed either. But it's
Mhm.
also, you have things you have to take a look at is where's the officer assigned, and they're not always assigned to one area here, there. So again, like the CLP officers, they're going to, if you look at what the stops that they make, you would say, these are awfully high. Well, not really, because they're riding in the North Webster and specifically in median area around the park, they're up there a lot. So again, those are things you have to take a look at when you're looking at officers individually, which we do try and do.
Mhm.
And again, the reason I put this up here is because this is the concern about racial profiling, and this is one of the things that we train against. And that is that the big concern, and quite honestly, in some departments, and to some degree, this was a practice 25 years ago. Quite honestly, I knew a lot of departments when I first came on, they were using this as a contextual reason for stop. Find a reason to stop a car because it's that a minority driver. So we make the officers aware of this. This is something that we don't want to do. Something that we try and make sure that we prevent. We train against it. We try and have a culture against it. Last year, we had 145 hours of training, racial profiling and implicit bias for officers. Both requires 1 hour training for each officer. So we have 45 officers when we're fully staffed. We train well above what the minimum post requirements are for racial profiling and for implicit bias.
So that's the aggregate number of hours for.
Yes. for the department. Most officers, I should say most, I'm gonna say that probably better than half the department has well above the max, the minimum hours since their training is required to get their post certification. Another one of the things we look at to make sure that we're not, there's not bias in our stops is it's not totally objective, but it's close. It's probably somewhat anecdotal, but you would think if if the officers are not profiling, then what's going to happen is that white drivers are going to have about the same percentage of tickets to warnings as black drivers are going to get tickets to warnings. So that they're not, it's not a bias factor. There are actually citations or actually violations going on. So one of the things you'll see in the report is you'll see the non-white arrest and citation rate. And we break that down. We saw white drivers, that's 73% of the white drivers had citations with 27% warnings. Black drivers had 75% with 25% warnings. So the statistical significance of that is pretty low. And that's what you would expect to see if your officers are trying to be objective and not subjective with traffic stops. On the search and hit rates, you'll see in here, they're pretty close to the same. So that we're not, it doesn't appear from the statistics that we're conducting more searches, are making more arrests of the black drivers than we are of the white drivers. And we're at the mean of both of these tables. And the last thing I put up here is another one of the things, this is more anecdotal than it is data driven objectively, but I think it's a consideration. Like I said, the radar details and officers writing tickets off of radars, the radar can't tell if the driver with the gender or the race of the driver. So what we look at is, okay, what percentage of the speeding violations are for black drivers and white drivers, and then what's the percentage for all other total violations? And you would expect that they should be somewhat similar. So again, with the white drivers, we're looking at about 73%, and with the black drivers, about 23%, and that's about the ratio you would expect for the number of stops that were made. So again, this is not totally objective, kind of like the farm is, but not totally objective, but I think it is a good gauge of taking a look at it anecdotally. You would expect these to be about comparatively the same if you weren't profiled. Does anyone have any questions on any of it?
I think this was in the Missouri report, the explanation of transitioning from that 2010 decennial census to the American Community Survey. But I guess in your word, what would the rationale for switching to that, since it impacted our numbers so much?
I think I don't really know the answer to that, but I think what it is that the census they felt wasn't as accurate as the American Community Survey. The American Community Survey gets deeper into the weeds of looking at all the data. So they felt that was a more accurate projection. And it probably is. It's just that the problem, I should say the issue was that when they went to that, it did drop the population a lot lower, which caused some disparity that could go up.
Do we get a lot of questions about this? What is released?
We have gotten a lot of questions about it, and there was a lot of concern about it. And again, like I said, we don't discount the fact that we do have what I have much higher disparity rate than what I would like for us to have.
Right.
But when we take a look at the data and take a look at what's causing it, and can objectively, pretty much objectively and anecdotally say that we're fairly confident that looking at the explanation for it, that we're not engaging in systemic racial profiling. Like I said, I can't ever guarantee, nobody ever guarantee there's not an officer or somebody out there that might be practicing that. But overall, as far as the department goes, I'm fairly comfortable that it's not a practice that we're engaged in.
Yeah.
But we've had questions about it, even when it was low, we were getting questions about the severity rate.
And I just wonder if it's worth like social media posts or something to kind of just put out a few bullets of like, here's why. Or you can add more of our own context to the report, like the driving population being an inner city community, inner ring community with the arterial roads and 44, like just giving some of that context in response to questions. and
I
concerns.
think that did help.
Yeah,
Again, I mean, there's some people that still have concern about it. I said, we don't discount it. We still
yeah,
are concerned about it and trying to take a look at it. But I think a lot of, especially the Alliance, when the Alliance became started becoming more engaged and looking at those kind of things. But I think we sat down and we went through the statistics and the data and how it played out as far as it's much more affected by the population than it was by anything else. I think that eased their concerns, at least to some degree. And again, we should always be concerned about it. We always need to keep on, make sure we take a look at it to make sure that something's not happening that's caused it to be much higher for reasons other than what we think they are. So, but again, I think we have helped explain to a lot of the community what's happening, how it's happening, and at least provide some level of comfort that we're not engaging in a blanket racial profile.
I totally agree with that, but we also don't have that explanation
yeah.
that was
I mean,
offered to a group of people available anywhere. And I think that we could probably take information, like your report's pretty information dense. There's a lot of context there, and I don't think most people are gonna really want to read more than, a page, and hopefully with some graphs, not a whole lot of words. And I wondered if that were something that we could put together. And I think, like your response when I asked about, well, do you look at this per officer? It never occurred to me, of course it matters where, they're stationed, because there are certain streets that they patrol that are more likely throughways and so forth. So I think bullet points of some of the ways that you dig into the data a little more to truly assess, like where might we find disparities, and do we find something that bears out that we need to look into further? And I know we talked about giving you a few months and revisiting maybe in September, but John and I were really interested in sort of what happens after the stop. And, like we saw a certain percentage of citations. And so for white drivers versus black drivers, were there a lot more citations that were based on sort of economic factors, possibly, broken
Well,
taillights or things like that.
So the speeding,
Yeah.
we're almost equal, and
Yeah.
then overall, we're almost equal. But I can drill down a little bit more, because on the VSR, they do have it in categories.
Yeah.
I can't drill down too much because they don't break it down a lot, but there are some other quotes where you could give them more. It's, what? I should have shared the screen. I don't think we have any participants, so. Hopefully. No, there's no-
I am curious, if we did, could we do our own analysis looking at that 20-mile radius? Do we have the info to be able to do that and see what it nets out at?
There is. Can't remember, it's a spatial racial study, and the one that I used is like 3 or 4 years old, and I'm sure they probably keep it current. But there are surveys and studies that do look at distances in geographic and demographic areas that can give you those figures. The one I looked at from 3 years ago, basically showed that within 10 miles, the black driving population here was right at 7%, and at the time it was showing us having about 3.2%. So it was almost double within a 10-mile radius of what was actually within Webster.
Yeah, Yeah, I just think it might be worth it. You know, at least. As a board first, like just kind of drilling down what you just said into a couple bullets. And then we could kind of decide next meeting or whatnot, if it makes sense as a social post or. Or something we want to put out there publicly.
Yeah, if we could put something on the website and then if people are interested.
Yeah.
You know, they would
Be like a
understand
fact-
stuff.
fact
This
sheet.
was, I know, not everybody can see this, but this is the table that I put together. Just looking at the other communities. So Shrewsbury, Rock Hill, Brentwood, Maplewood.
Yeah.
And their percentages. And when you look at it that way. You know, it's, I mean, you see how disparate these communities are. So to say that there's gonna be a number that is gonna accurately capture is probably not, realistic to say. And that's why it's important for us to look at, the other questions that Dale has already prepared, some of them. And I think it would be helpful for the community to see that.
You should go over a little bit to what the disparity rate ended up being.
Can I get it? No, let me make it just a little bit smaller.
Yeah, see, I think Brentwood's a good example of how.
Well, their disparity rate is
high,
11 or 12%, but I thought about, okay,
yeah,
that's the Galleria Mall.
right, and like 60.
A Metro stop.
Yeah. Mhm.
And it's such a tiny community.
Yeah,
It's
Brentwood's a good
not
example
even
of
7,000.
So much shopping.
One of the other
so
things that
many
we've talked about, it, you
Yeah.
can't, it's really almost impossible to drill down on. Is that, well, some of it is social economic, and that
Yeah.
is. If you have a lower income, you have a hard time keeping your car up, you have a hard time registering it, making sure that the signals all work, the lights, et cetera, et cetera. So that when you're talking about code violations. That's going to skew it a little bit more, so you have to consider that. There's almost no way to tell it because they don't include equipment violations in the VSRs as far as breaking them down. But it's really difficult to get in the weeds, but I'm sure that if somebody did a study of that, if they would show that there's a social economic factor to the number of tickets issued as well.
Yeah.
I wonder if there are communities that, okay, you know how you see sometimes those feel good stories about, oh, somebody does something really nice, and there's a story of the officer that stops a lady and she's got the taillights out and she's like so frustrated because she doesn't know how to put it in. And he stops and he helps her put it in. And I'm not saying that all our police officers should do that, but what I'm wondering is in communities where you do see a pattern of maybe citations related to vehicle malfunctions or disrepairs. I wonder if there are ever like grants to help people, or, I don't know if there's ever policy.
I don't
That
know that
looks
it's
at that.
one of the things that actually the board
We just
talked about before,
Yeah,
Yeah,
but our officers do have a lot of discretion, especially when it comes to those kind of things. I really prefer that they not use a lot of discretion on hazardous moving violations. I mean,
oh,
but
yeah.
that does happen as well sometimes. And we've got a few videos. I don't know if we have time or if you want to get into it, but actually. We'll show you that on a number of occasions, the officers they treat people decently. I haven't run across any videos where I've gone, I've seen some of them, we're not perfect, but they generally treat people decent and generally give people a break when they have even a little bit of an excuse as to why my title's not quite right or my registration's a little off. I'm a little behind, so I think our officers do that we're pretty good about using some common sense. They're not real hard nosed about it. No, your license plate's a month expired, you get the ticket.
Well, do we want to look at the videos? Really, the rest of the things on the agenda are things that I think we need to vote on, other than we have the web page to look at, and Jill, you said you had some edits to that.
Yeah.
I would love for us to be able to bring it to closure and pass it on to Jenny, because we keep saying, oh, this will be so great, people can give feedback. So
I sent you some edits last night. I
Okay.
don't know if it's helpful. Me to like read it. But maybe that's something if we do a quick Zoom meeting, just kind of resending that out and getting folks approval. For
I-
next-
Well, if we schedule it and we use the city Zoom and we post the agenda for it, if we get a quorum at a mid-month meeting, we could approve it. Is that right?
Yes, if we want to do a letter of support, and I think I would
Yeah.
like to do that for Dr. Peoples. If we
Yeah.
can. We need to probably schedule a Zoom meeting for next week. I know it's a bad week because it's a holiday week, but if we could just get 4 or 5 people together to do that, it would be a good thing.
She wanted it on June
She wanted
30th.
it by June 30th, though.
It's this,
Friday.
this Friday.
That's this
I
Friday.
guess ambitious, but
I mean, for me, I can make it work. It's up to you all, people that are here.
We could, of those of us here today, we only have 3 voting members. Are you guys available Thursday or Friday?
What
That's
time?
cutting it awful
Yeah.
close. It would be
Early evening or what? are you
the
talking?
early evening,
Like
maybe
5?
6, 5:30.
And you're saying brief?
Yeah, I think so. If we focus on just that webpage and
You
we,
know, there are new interns in the hospital.
uh,
I don't know about you, but
Must be
oh,
watching.
when does that
Must be
turnover
watching.
happen? Yeah.
do you need to do
Now,
do you need
this
to
week.
do the webpage like right away? So all I was saying was like a 5-minute.
You just want to do a 5-minute
Just
meeting to
to say-
look at our letter.
We
Yeah.
approve the letter
Yeah.
of support.
Let's do
Okay.
that.
You can do that in 5 minutes easily.
Okay. Yeah, we have the letter here, and so we just want to make some edits. And then get together. So Thursday or Friday? I mean, Thursday?
yeah, I would support Thursday over Friday.
Okay. I will lobby Katie and John and
One or
Centron
two
to see if
more.
they
Okay.
can.
What time do you need it set up for? I'm pretty sure I can get it Zoom for Thursday.
I'm pretty open on Thursday. Is it better for you at 5, Scott? Is that earlier better or
No, 5:30 would be.
5:30?
Yeah, I think.
Okay.
Yeah.
I work from home that day, so I'm just going from one Zoom to another.
Anybody can even get on their phone. Like I said, it shouldn't take more than 5 minutes. We can get on, say,
Yeah.
vote
I mean,
yes.
yeah, it
and
shouldn't matter.
I'll move on.
5:30 is more guaranteed for them
Okay,
to have a minute, so. But that's all right. 5:30. I'll just put it down.
okay.
I mean,
Well, Dale, let us know if you can get that. And do I need to write a formal agenda or can we just post that we're voting on it?
I can do that. You don't need
You
to do
can
it.
take care of
I'll
it.
get the Katie.
Okay.
Should we
Yeah,
post it
because you don't
tomorrow?
know which one I'll email. It could be entirely the wrong. I figured out my problem is my computer doesn't have any more space to save. So it's sticking stuff out on the cloud for my work and then trying to find it again. It's
Yeah,
bad. So
for your computer.
I do. It's too much. Well, I do websites, so
Oh,
it's kind of the thing. But I gotta retrieve all that and get it into the right box again. That's great. So we'll do the letter. And this is Thursday at
And if
5:30.
you're okay with it, I'll just do the agenda. I'll use your letterhead and just put the approval of the letter.
That sounds
Katie.
great.
We'll post it. We'll be good to go.
who's going to do the letter?
Edits. Jill, do you want to work on it with me?
For that.
Dr.
The letter
Nichols
or-
emailed it to me. It's the letter that we're working on.
this-
And then, let me check that I've got your edits for the,
It's a
Yeah,
nice
so-
letter, but I can see it's kind of slanted toward streets and things, but I guess if we can take a DEI look at it and put that in there.
Yeah, I think it
The
would be
equity
important
piece.
to connect it back. To our mission, our purpose, yeah.
mhm. Oh, I got your edits right here. So I can put that in there.
I was
yeah.
gonna say if. I don't, we'll keep it brief still, but I know you also really want to get that up and going on the website, so we can maybe
do.
spend 2 minutes on
Yeah.
that, yeah, I think.
So, yeah, if we have that, it will be the second time that we've looked at the same page. So I know we want to keep it really short on Thursday, but if the letter is pretty straightforward, then, and we have this web form, I'll have that up. And I'll be sure that I get my computer cleared out, or I buy an external hard drive so we can fit everything here.
Unless people have a problem with it, you don't really need to even approve the exact wording. All you have to do is say, we support, we vote to do the letter, support it. And then you, whoever wants to work on it, can
Oh,
work on
okay.
it. Simple. That's what you don't really need to
Yeah.
work
Oh,
on
really?
it as approved. No. As long as you all vote
That makes
to allow
sense.
somebody to do it. And
Emerson, did you see the letters from some of the other groups?
Probably in my packet. I'll get it
Mhm.
for next week, but I can see that. But I do know, Dr. People mentioned as well. The PCB is a little bit different. We have the ability to put that equity piece in the stream within some of the other commissions.
The equity mentioned there, but yeah, I think we can draw maybe a little more specific connection, yeah.
Especially back into your purpose and things of that nature.
Well, and I see also, there's a big relationship between the infrastructure available and, the equity in someone's quality of life. So. I don't think we have any other old business. Do we want to watch videos or do we want to break early and come back and revisit this in another meeting? Because I feel like too many people are missing this.
it's only what you all want to do.
And I've seen the videos, I think it's.
Which I was gonna do like a couple or three from the ones we did before, but then I got like 4 or 5 from this year. But again, if you want to have more people to be able to look at them, that's why, either way, I'm fine with whatever you want to do.
I'm very early and
Yeah.
I think I don't get one.
All right, well,
I'll try and get us set up to 5:30 on Thursday.
okay. Well, then.
Can't believe it even.
Then we move to adjourn the meeting.
It was an
And
informal discussion.
it's just like, hey, we're all done, guys. Have a good weekend.
Thank you.
Is anybody else doing the parade? Walking in it? It's coming up.
I'm not walking, that's for sure.
Well, yeah, I imagine they arrange transportation for council members.
Well, yeah, I think this year we're gonna be riding in the back of one of the trailers. We used to ride in Corvettes, so I don't know what happened to that.
I remember that when they said